Good afternoon, everyone. Oh no, we've done this already, people. Okay. Like we already know. Good afternoon, everyone. Much better. Thank you so much. As you all know, my name is Morgan Shepherd Vieira. We've moved on to the part of the program this afternoon where we get a very special treat. We have a guest speaker who's going to be coming up to address us today. I'm not going to belabor the point. I'd like to just get right to it. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Krista Surya.
Yeah, I'm not going to do the stage, okay? Go ahead and go to the next slide. So, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I'm really not that special, and being a guest speaker, I mean, that's a little off as well. But I do like the program, and I understand why it matters, and I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit, and kind of give you guys a vision of how this is viewed at the strategic level, starting at Secretary of Defense's office and going down to the service secretaries, and then a couple of the challenges that currently exist right now that you guys are going to help us make sure that this program is able to move forward with. Why IRT matters. If you guys look at the strategic challenges that are up on the slide, the operational environment that we're currently dealing with affects everything that we do within the Department of Defense. Doesn't matter what service you're in, doesn't matter what compo you're in. That's what we need to be training for. So we talk about it, right? We talk about multi-domains. That's why this program is so amazing, because it's joint. Right? Each of us has a specialty. Doesn't matter if it's the land domain, the air domain, the maritime domain, or the cyber domain. And we're starting to branch into cyber as an IRT program, and that's even more amazing just because you guys are getting ahead of it. And we're going to be able to make a difference on that domain that is so new. But you look at the lethal battlefields, complex terrain, challenge deterrence, emerging technology, going back to cyber, strategic competitors. That's what we're training for, right? And now you look at some of the domestic challenges that we have going on. Climate change, hence Alaska. Border challenges and the policy that goes along with that. Not so much an IRT thing, but still a challenge. And we do a lot of IRTs on the borders that can actually impact how they view the military, DOD in the United States, right? Natural disasters. Everything that you guys do is in preparation for that as well. Who lives along the Mississippi River? Show of hands. All right, so New Madrid's going to suck, and everybody in this room is going to have to figure out how to support the United States when the New Madrid earthquake happens, right? And a lot of what you guys do with regards to IRT is in preparation for that, whether you're talking about military readiness, training readiness, medical readiness, equipment readiness. That is the number one goal, is that we're ready, and we're not getting ready to do an IRT, we're getting ready to do that real world mission. And you guys are using IRT as a tool to be able to assess how ready we are in order to be able to do that. So the other piece of that is the news, right? Sometimes, and especially I would say probably within the past 7 years, and we could use Jen's example of Kaepernick and everything else, we have the news, we have the fake news, and then we have just an uninformed population when it comes to not only the IRT program, but really getting back to what we do as a military. And you guys get to be a voice on the front lines of the DOMOP side, who actually shows that we're not there to take over the community. We're not there to be the police of the community, but we're there to support the community. And that's really what the IRT program is all about. So going back to the operational environment, the fact that we have been at war for 18 years, I think really, and on this, it's primarily for the Air National Guard and the Army National Guard, but everybody as a whole has a piece of it, is the service identity. You know, based on the fact that all we've been doing is deploying, and that has been our op tempo, we've started to lose touch with the community. And so we've also started to lose touch with who we are and why we exist. And IRT is a tool to be able to get that back. Additionally, you're able to focus on mission command, right? So that's one of the number one things we mess up when we're deployed. Focus on mission command. It's your time to train, and as you guys talk to the commanders that are going to be executing this mission, it's an opportunity for them to train their junior leaders on mission command. You do it at a training event, right? So that they're ready to do it for the real world. Civilian authority interaction, that's a huge one. Doesn't matter if we're talking about DISCA operations or if we're just talking about community support. We want that interaction and we want to be comfortable with it. When you guys go to an IRT, one of the first things I would do, you meet your community leaders, And then you continue to build on that relationship. It's not a you meet them and you're gone. You meet them and you continue to build that relationship, because that's what we need as the Department of Defense right now, especially getting that community support back behind us. Retention tool. I'm pretty sure everybody here could understand why IRT is a retention tool. What soldiers don't like, and I'm sure it's the same across all the other services, is when you tell them we're going to go do a training event. You go to the same training area that you've always been in. You have, a small patch of dirt that you tell your engineers to push back and forth, and that's what they do for 2 weeks. They push dirt. Not so much what they signed up for. But if you're able to give them an IRT where they're able to do that, it's going to work as a retention tool, and that's really what it should be used for, right? You're going to measure readiness, and you're going to retain those soldiers, airmen, Marines, whatever the case may be, to make sure that you still have a ready force within the military. Collective and individual training, it says training for a reason, right? So that should be our number one focus. And you can tie this to your training readiness and make sure that it does support your medal. There's going to be times that you have to get creative in order to make that work. And that's why we exist. That's why the Army Training Network exists. That's why, at least on the Army side, we have Fort Leavenworth, TRADOC, FORCECOM. If there is something out there that you guys want to do that is not necessarily in support of the IRT, but you think you can combine it to get that training value out of it for one of your medal tasks, then talk to us and let us help you work it out. We have a great team, and I know that they'll support you guys as well. If they can't get the support, you come up to us, right? Secretary of the Army, Secretary of the Navy, Secretary of the Air Force, we're going to figure out how to get it for you guys. You just got to communicate. Communicate first with your leads, and at that point, they'll contact us, and if we can help you, we will. Real-world logistics. I'm a logistician. So obviously that is probably one of the more important things I think about when I think of an IRT, because there's nothing that's going to tank a mission more than if you don't coordinate properly for your logistics. If you don't coordinate for the food, if you don't coordinate for the material, if you don't coordinate for where they need to be sleeping, right? Everything that goes into that, again, you're focused on readiness. And then really the last piece that I'll tell you up there, again, interoperability, joint and civilian, we kind of talked about that already, and I'm going to expand on that a little bit in a minute. But taking training from relevance to significance, right? So everything that you guys do for IRT, and I hope everything you do for training in general, is relevant. But when you actually start making that impact on the community, the example from the West Virginia last year, I think for the School of the Deaf and the Blind, that's when you're making your training significant. Because you're impacting, not DOD, you're impacting the lives of Americans, and that's pretty awesome because it's an opportunity that we get, it's a privilege we get, and you guys get to be the ones that do that. And I think that that's the most important piece, is it's not about going out and you're able to accomplish everything and you're a T1 on the Army side and there is nothing you care about beyond that until you see the children and the families and the community that you impact, and it makes it that much better. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank you guys, because you guys are here because you're involved in the IRT program. And based on that, you get to accomplish some of those things, which is absolutely amazing. Go to the next slide. Okay, so we're going to go back to take this up a step, right, to the strategic level a little bit. How does IRT build readiness and assess or assist us with joint interoperability? Everything's joint. Doesn't matter what you read right now. You open up a regulation and you're going to somewhere in there find joint combined arms operations, or you're going to find multi-domain battle, multi-domain operations, right? Nothing we do right now is tied to one domain, and nothing that we're training for right now is tied to one domain. Based on the force mix within this room, obviously, I would say that this is very much a joint program. And for a lot of those IRT events that you guys are executing, those are very much joint programs as well. And you guys are doing that. You each have a piece of it in order to accomplish a mission. And that's what we're going to have to do for our next deployment. So what do we know about the operational environment, right? We know that there's a whole lot of stuff. There's going to be multiple dilemmas. And you bring AI, technology, and all that in, right? It's going to get even worse. Multiple options, multiple domains, multiple partners. Think about IRT. Think about the communities you work with. Think about the things that could happen during that IRT that you didn't plan for. Multiple dilemmas, right? The multiple options. Again, Jen and everybody's talked about it. Each of you have a certain piece of that IRT, right? Those options aren't limited to one service. You guys are going to talk. You're going to get interoperability. You're going to find out what the best solution to accomplish something is. Multiple domains. Cyber, right? Land, air, Alaska, sounds like you guys pretty much hit them all, maybe. If you throw a little bit of cyber in there, you could probably say you did it. And then the multiple partners. Okay, so if you're able to talk to a community leader, or if your lieutenants, your E5s are able to talk to a community leader or city mayor, they're probably going to be able to talk to a local sheikh. They're probably going to be able to talk within a prime minister's office if you're coordinating something on an overseas deployment. So this is all the same, and every single thing you touch is a training opportunity in order to be able to get to that joint level of interoperability for the strategic environment. So training, everything in IRT, training, right, keyword, supports individual and collective. I'm not going to belabor that, but I am going to make sure that you guys think through this. We have a lot of opportunities, a lot of systems out there, at least on the Army side, and if I'm sure it's across all the different services. But if you want to build a scenario around that IRT, you could go into TRADOC G2 and you could figure out where your enemy forces are going to be, how they're going to be arrayed, and it's almost going to generate a scenario for you. Now, obviously, your primary mission is to do what you agreed to do for the IRT. But once again, there's absolutely no reason why you can't bring a training scenario that's going to help you accomplish your medal to that. And we can actually send out all of those sources. And again, if you guys want it for all the services, we could look at that too. It shouldn't be that hard to coordinate. Supports to individual and collective training to defense support to civil authorities. Okay, so if you have a natural disaster, you're getting ready to roll out, there's a lot of actions you have to take, right? Recall rosters. Got to make sure that your equipment's up and running, staged and ready to go. We do it all the time. Hurricane season, a couple months before hurricane season, you're doing those checks on your equipment, making sure they're ready to go, right? You may be pre-staging it during hurricane season, especially if you're one of those states that has an EMAC agreement with a state that's about to get hit. Same deal for IRT. As you guys are preparing to go on those IRT missions, you are doing the exact same thing. So now not only are you accomplishing your wartime mission, you're doing a great training opportunity, but you get to check the block for what you're trying to do with defense support to civil authorities and making sure that you are ready to take that next step should you be called. Leader development. I am 100% convinced that the only way to train leaders is to put them in scenarios that test them. And so as you're in that IRT and it's a controlled environment, put some of your junior leaders into positions and make them talk through the actions that they need to take, the challenges they need to take. Occasionally let them fall because, again, it's going to make them stronger when it matters. Once again, you can't let the IRT mission fail, but you can actually use it as a great training opportunity. Op orders, task orders, direct liaison, you guys all got that, right? I'm just saying, think outside the box and don't just think about it as an IRT. Let's talk through readiness. Once again, we already hit on that. Higher headquarters involved. If you guys, so we'll talk states for a minute on the National Guard side. How many National Guard people do we have in here? Any? Okay, a lot, wow. Okay, so IRT mission, get your state involved. We have to do the medical ready exercises all the time. You have to do SRPs all the time. Let them get training on this too. Number one, you become a hero because you just help them write their training plan for a certain portion of that year. But number two, you're making your state better in the process. And I guarantee that, once again, looking at that as a retention tool, eventually you guys are going to be the unit that everybody wants to join because you're going out and you're doing cool stuff. The state's saying you're doing cool stuff because they're helping you get there. So you got to just think about all the different benefits that happen through an IRT program, not just what you see, read, and think you understand. You really do have authority and like the leniency to think outside the box, especially in the planning phases of it. And then mistakes. Back to everything is a training opportunity. So these are two things that have happened that I was in a leadership position on, not with the unit, but at least I got the phone call. So a lake repair for a boat ramp, right? And this was basically they got asked to do it so they could back boats up so that they could go out and they could do the shock the pond thing or whatever they do with that. I get the phone call that there is a bulldozer submerged in the lake. So when you first hear that, first reports are never right. So you're really hoping that it's not really submerged. But when I drove out there, there was literally a soldier standing in the middle of the lake. And it looks like, he's kind of like Jesus, right? Walking on water. Because he was standing on top of the bulldozer so that they didn't lose it, so that they could actually figure out how to go get the equipment to recover it. So was that a mistake? Maybe. Or was that a training opportunity for a hasty recovery, right? It's all about perspective. So leaders, soldiers, airmen, everything's a training opportunity. Number two, connecting a National Guard Armory septic system to city sewage. So it kept backing up, so the city wanted it connected and so did the unit. So you had a new group of engineers that said, hey, we want to do it because we want to prove ourselves. As they did that, they weren't anticipating there was a sinkhole, neither was the city. And literally an entire city block of curb fell in. Mistake? Training opportunity, right? So now not only did they have to do the curb repair, but they also had to go do damage control with the city mayor. The school that it basically shut down the entire block to get to, so there was a little bit of trouble with buses. There was a whole lot that went on to that. They got a little legal training as well. Training opportunity, right? Not a mistake. So think outside the box. Things are going to happen. Things happen all the time on deployments. Things are going to happen during IRT. Provided the leaders that you have executing those are doing their job, don't make it into a thing, make it into a leadership opportunity. Adjust the plan, right? Multiple dilemmas, multiple options, multiple partners. Adjust the plan, use it as a training opportunity, and drive on. Even if you do end up drowning a bulldozer in the middle of the lake, that does not mean that that IRT was not successful. If you were able to accomplish your training objectives and the IRT mission got done, then you are successful. Perspective. What's that? Yeah, absolutely. And it was a pretty good hasty recovery, kind of. Next slide. All right. So now let's talk strategically a little bit. So Secretary of Defense, 3 priorities, right? Restore military readiness. And if you guys have looked at your IRT objectives, you will know that one of those is to provide hands-on real-world training to improve readiness and survivability in contingency operations. Pretty easy, right? You guys are helping the Secretary of Defense accomplish his #1 goal. Number 2, strengthen alliances, attract new partners. Again, you can do this in the civilian side. That is going to translate to what you're going to have to do no matter where you deploy to, no matter where your soldiers deploy to. It's better to let them feel uncomfortable during an IRT than to make them feel uncomfortable in a real-world situation. And then business reform to the Department of Defense. This is where we need your help, and this is really where Colonel Scott's going to need your help, and I'm going to try to come in and save him like the Army always does with the Air Force, right? Sorry. I'm sorry. All right. So the Fourth Estate. What is it and why do you care? Does anybody know what the Fourth Estate is? Because I'll be honest with you, 2 weeks ago, I had no idea what the Fourth Estate was, and it's become my life. So the Fourth Estate is anything and everything within DoD that isn't owned by a service. So the Army doesn't own it, the Air Force doesn't own it, Marines don't own it, Navy doesn't own it, nobody owns it. An example would be National Defense University, right? It's a national thing that no service owns. It's kind of owned by the Secretary of Defense and the Joint Staff. IRT is within that Fourth Estate. So Secretary Esper, if you guys have been watching the news, last year he made the Army go through what we called night court. And that was basically, we had to look at every single Army program and we had to justify the funding for it. And this was all because we had to pay for Army Futures Command and we had to pay out of hide. Well, in the process of that, I think what the Army learned is there were a lot of efficiencies that could be gained from doing that. We had funding that was going to some programs that had either been taken down a level or quite honestly were on the chopping block and weren't even being executed anymore. We found quite a bit of money. Unfortunately for the other services, because that worked so well when he became the Secretary of Defense, he decided to do that for all of DoD. And so, as you can see, DoD's so-called Fourth Estate is going to be cut by 25% in 2021, and it's all of those different agencies. When an IRT mission goes well, it is very easy to justify why it should be funded. When an IRT goes bad, it is very hard to justify why we should keep it. You can do all of the best IRT missions in the world. You can make sure that you have pictures of you're kissing babies and walking old ladies across the street, and it's amazing. One unit, one soldier, airman, Marine can ruin all of that and can ruin the funding for it. So we talked about the soldier who got a little intoxicated, right? Not so much a training opportunity on that one. Like, he probably deserves to be hung. So you got to think through, like, how do we save the Fourth Estate? The only way that we're going to save the Fourth Estate is if we do it right. And the only way we can do it right is if you guys are not only emphasizing this to your leaders, but also making sure that anybody involved in that IRT mission understands the magnitude, not just of the training and the impact they're going to have on the community, but the magnitude of what it does when you're looking at it from a strategic level, right? Secretary of Defense, trust me, he is 100% in support of the program because he sees the value of it. But even he can't justify it to Congress if we start messing it up. So this is a painful process. And I, just as we talk strategically, understand that almost every service is going to be going through this on different levels with their own service secretaries based on what ESPR is going to direct. But again, looking at this program, we care about the fourth estate because that's where this program lies. So that's pretty much all I had. Unless you guys have any questions, I appreciate your time, and I'm sorry I wasn't as dynamic as I could have been, but you guys are pretty awesome.
Sorry, ma'am.
Thanks. Anything else? And I love the Air Force, by the way. Just throw that out there.
Now she says that.
My nephew's in the Air Force. Like, we're an Air Force family. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Please welcome to the stage the Air Force, coming in hot. No, really, thank you, Colonel Surya.
Yeah, I didn't want Colonel Surya to think that that comment was going to go unnoticed and unchallenged. So, no, first, I just want to say thank you for coming and sharing that with us. And the one thing I wanted to point out, I did not know the Colonel was going to bring this up, was about when she talked about the fourth estate. So when you all see that we're taking opportunities to do things like Distinguished Visitors Days for all the OSD-funded missions, all the times that you guys are being prodded and asked to give your perspective on the program, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or the newsletter, that's the reason why. This is a tremendous program with a very minuscule level of investment, but a huge payoff, both on the military side and in our communities. But we have to be the ones that are proponents to tell that story so that it gets out to the right stakeholders and they can make decisions. Because there's tough decisions that are being made. There's some great programs that are in the DoD that are having to compete and having to justify their existence. We're one of them, right? But so far, you all have done a great job getting the training that you need, number one, and also making that lasting impact in the communities. And that's what keeps this program going. And on top of that, what keeps Congress wanting to fund us above and beyond what we're listed in the president's budget. So thank you for coming up and sharing that with us. A lot of great things to think about. Definitely much appreciated. And I hope that was beneficial to all of you. If you don't see it now, trust me, you'll see it when you start planning and executing missions out there in the field. So just want to say that. Thank you again, Colonel.
Thank you, sir. All right, well, that is concluding our day. I just am doing some visual checks to make sure nobody else has anything. Okay, so we do have the no host social hour this evening. Please come network, chat, especially so I can catch up with some of you that I haven't seen in a while. And if you are a facilitator tomorrow, you know who you are, please just stay back so we can sync up real quick before we embark on tomorrow's journey. Other than that, we'll see you bright and early in the morning. Make good choices and have a wonderful evening.